Most advice sounds good, but doesn't work in real life. You've probably heard all the usual tips about success, mindset, and personal growth, but still felt stuck. That's because most advice is either too fluffy, too scripted, or just doesn't apply to your real, messy life. Welcome to Self-Advice That Works. Inside, you'll discover why your good habits keep failing and the brutal reason no one tells you. How to turn self-doubt into fuel without lying to yourself. The three-word question that kills procrastination. Hint: it's not just do it. How to trust yourself again, even after epic failures. And many more. Chapter 1. Master your mindset. Your thoughts shape your life because they are the root of every feeling, decision, and action you take. What you consistently think determines how you see yourself, how you interpret the world around you, and how you respond to challenges or opportunities. In other words, your mindset isn't just a passive background, it's the lens that filters your entire reality. If you repeatedly think thoughts like, "I'm not good enough," "nothing ever works out for me," or "I'll probably fail," your mind begins to treat those statements as fact. 7, though they're just opinions you've rehearsed over time. These thoughts quietly influence the risks you avoid, the goals you delay, and the effort you withhold. You don't just think them, you live them. You shrink your possibilities to match your mindset. On the other hand, empowering thoughts open doors. Believing, "I can figure this out," or "I've made it through worse," or "this challenge is an opportunity to grow," creates a completely different experience. Even in hardship, these thoughts drive resilience. They give you permission to keep showing up, to learn, to take imperfect action, and to move forward. They don't erase fear or failure, but they keep fear from being in charge. This isn't toxic positivity. It's not about pretending everything is great. It's about recognizing that the stories you tell yourself, day after day, build the emotional and mental framework of your life. Thoughts create feelings. Feelings drive behavior. Behavior reinforces identity. And your identity drives the results you get. It all starts with what you allow to echo inside your head. Imagine two people facing the same problem, a job loss. One immediately thinks, "I'm doomed, I've failed, no one will hire me." The other thinks, "This is tough, but maybe it's a reset I needed. What can I do next?" The difference between those two realities is not just circumstances, it's thought patterns. And over time, those patterns either lead to stuckness or growth. Your internal dialogue becomes the script you act out. That's why changing your life requires changing your thinking. It's not about faking confidence or lying to yourself. It's about choosing thoughts that align with your values, your vision, and the future you want to create. The mind is incredibly powerful, but it doesn't automatically serve you. It serves whatever narrative you feed it most often. You are not at the mercy of every thought that shows up. You can question them. You can interrupt them. You can rewrite them. And when you do, you begin to shape a reality that reflects strength, possibility, and truth, not fear, doubt, and limitation. So if you want to change your life, start by becoming fiercely intentional about what you allow to live in your mind. Because eventually, that's what lives in your actions and your results. Why your good habits keep failing, and the brutal reason no one tells you. Your good habits keep failing not because you're lazy, weak, or unmotivated, but because you've been sold a lie. That forming a habit is about willpower, discipline, or even repetition alone. The brutal truth no one tells you is this: you don't rise to the level of your good intentions, you fall to the strength of your systems. If the foundation is weak, the habit will always collapse under pressure, stress, or boredom. We love the idea of self-improvement. It feels good to set goals, make lists, and start new habits with excitement. But excitement fades. Life gets messy. And when you're tired, overwhelmed, or emotionally drained, your brain will default to whatever is easiest, not whatever is best. That's not a character flaw. It's neuroscience. Your brain is built to conserve energy, avoid pain, and chase comfort. That's why willpower alone will never sustain a habit long term. It's a short-term tool, not a long-term strategy. So when your good habit falls apart, what's actually happening? You're trying to operate in a high-friction environment with a low-friction mindset. You haven't designed your life to support the habit. You're relying on hope instead of systems. You're saying, "I'll just try harder," instead of asking, "How can I make this automatic?" Here's the brutal part. If your habit depends on you feeling motivated, it's already doomed. Motivation is a mood. Habits need to function even when you're in a bad one. That's why successful people build systems that remove decision-making. They don't wake up and ask, "Should I work out today?" They've already made the decision, built the routine, pre-packed the gym bag, and scheduled it into their day. They make the habit easier to follow than to break. Another reason your habits fail is because you start too big. You go from 0 to 10, "I'll meditate for 30 minutes every morning," or "I'll run 5 miles every day." But your brain doesn't respond well to drastic change. It resists it. And when you miss a day, you label yourself as a failure, which leads to shame, which leads to quitting. The better strategy? Start so small, it's almost stupid. 1 push-up, 1 page, 1 minute. Because success isn't about intensity, it's about consistency. And consistency only sticks when it feels manageable. Your habits also fail when they're not tied to your identity. You say, "I want to eat healthy," but you still identify as someone who loves junk food. You say, "I want to be productive," but you still tell yourself, "I'm just a procrastinator." Your behavior will never outrun your self-image. If you don't change how you see yourself, you'll sabotage any habit that contradicts your current identity. The fix? Start telling yourself a new story. Not, "I'm trying to run," but "I'm a runner." Not, "I want to write more," but "I'm a writer." Identity drives behavior. So stop blaming yourself for habits that won't stick. Instead, blame the structure. Fix the system. Shrink the starting point. Redesign your environment. Align your habits with your identity. And stop waiting to feel motivated. Design your life so the habit becomes the default, not the exception. Because good habits don't fail because they're not good enough. They fail because they're not built to survive real life. Change that and the habit will finally stick. How to turn self-doubt into fuel without lying to yourself. Self-doubt feels like a weakness, but when used correctly, it can become one of your greatest sources of growth. The key is to stop pretending it's not there, and instead learn how to use it. Most people either try to ignore self-doubt, drown it out with fake positivity, or let it paralyze them. But there's a better way. You turn self-doubt into fuel not by lying to yourself, but by learning to listen to it strategically. The first mistake people make is thinking self-doubt is always wrong. It's not. Sometimes it's your brain's way of signaling you're doing something unfamiliar, or this matters to you. Self-doubt often shows up when you're pushing into new territory, starting a business, writing a book, speaking up, changing careers, being seen. And instead of taking that doubt as a reason to stop, you can reframe it as proof you're on the edge of expansion. The second mistake is trying to silence self-doubt with shallow affirmations. Telling yourself, "I'm amazing," or "I've got this," when deep down you don't believe it can backfire. It creates internal conflict, not confidence. Your mind resists lies. So instead of fake hype, practice honest empowerment. Say, "I may not know how to do this yet, but I'm willing to learn." Or, "I'm scared, but that doesn't mean I'm incapable." That shift is subtle but powerful. You're not lying to yourself, you're leading yourself. To turn self-doubt into fuel, start treating it like feedback. Ask, what exactly am I doubting right now? Is it my ability, my preparation, my worth? Once you pinpoint the root, you can take action. If it's a skills gap, study more, practice harder. If it's fear of judgment, remind yourself who you're doing it for. If it's perfectionism, set a goal of completion, not flawlessness. The doubt gives you your next move. You also have to learn how to act with doubt, not wait for it to go away. Waiting to feel confident before you move is a trap. Most confidence is built through action, not before it. You don't become fearless and then you speak and become less afraid. The more you act despite doubt, the more your brain learns. I can feel this and still follow through. That builds earned confidence, which is far more powerful than fake confidence. Another way to transform self-doubt is to keep receipts. Create a proof list of times you've overcome fear, succeeded under pressure, or done hard things you once thought you couldn't. When doubt shows up, revisit that list. Remind yourself, doubt is just a sign you're human, not a reason to stop. And remember, self-doubt only wins when it leads to inaction. If it makes you sharpen, prepare, train, or strategize, then it's not weakness, it's fuel. The goal isn't to eliminate doubt. It's to outgrow it by doing the very things it says you can't. So don't run from self-doubt. Use it. Let it sharpen your focus. Let it humble your ego. Let it push you to prepare. Then, walk forward anyway. You don't need to be completely confident. You just need to be willing to try. That's where power is built, not in the absence of doubt, but in the refusal to be ruled by it. The three-word question that kills procrastination. Hint, it's not just do it. The three-word question that kills procrastination isn't just do it. That phrase might sound catchy on a billboard, but it often lacks emotional weight in real-life moments of hesitation. When you're staring at a blank page, ignoring a hard conversation, or putting off that one task you know you need to do, the real game-changing question is this: what happens if? This small but powerful question cuts through the fog of procrastination because it shifts your brain out of avoidance and into clarity. Procrastination thrives on emotional discomfort. It feeds off vague fears, perfectionism, overwhelm, or the temporary comfort of distraction. But when you stop and ask, what happens if I do this now? Or even more sharply, what happens if I don't? You force your mind to confront reality instead of escape it. Procrastination is not about laziness. It's about protection. Your brain is trying to avoid pain, whether that's the discomfort of failing, the uncertainty of not knowing where to start, or even the identity crisis that comes with success. But asking, what happens if, cuts through that noise. It pulls the fear out of the shadows and makes it visible. For example, say you've been putting off applying for a job you want. You feel unqualified. You're afraid of rejection. Instead of saying, just do it, try. What happens if I apply? You might get an interview. You might get clarity. You might get rejected and learn what to improve. Then ask, what happens if I don't apply? You stay stuck. The opportunity passes. You reinforce the belief that you're not ready. You live with regret. That contrast wakes you up. It makes the cost of inaction real. You can apply this question to almost anything. What happens if I go to the gym today? What happens if I send the email? What happens if I finally start the book? What happens if I stop waiting and move anyway? And don't just ask once. Ask both sides of the coin. What happens if I do this? What happens if I don't? This creates internal urgency, not from panic, but from clarity. You start to see that action is often far less painful than delay. You realize that fear loses its power when you look it in the face. The beauty of this three-word question is that it invites logic into a moment ruled by emotion. It's not hype, it's not pressure, it's awareness. It lets you zoom out and see the bigger picture, which makes the next step feel smaller and more doable. And often, once you ask that question, the hesitation shrinks. You stop overthinking. You stop dramatizing the task. You just do it, but this time, not because of a slogan, but because you actually understand why it matters. So next time you catch yourself stalling, don't try to force motivation. Just pause and ask, what happens if? Let the answer pull you forward. Let clarity do the heavy lifting. Because once you see the cost of delay and the power of starting, procrastination has no place left to hide. How to trust yourself again even after epic failures. Trusting yourself again after failure, especially after a big, embarrassing, or painful one, can feel almost impossible. You might tell yourself, I should have known better, or I always mess things up, and over time, those thoughts become more than passing doubts. They become beliefs. But here's the truth. Failure doesn't mean you're broken. It means you tried something that didn't work, and that's exactly where self-trust can be rebuilt. Most people think trust is only something you extend to others. But the most important trust you'll ever build is the one between you and you. And after a major failure, that inner trust gets shaky. You start second-guessing your instincts. You hesitate to make decisions. You defer your voice to others. You confuse caution with safety. But underneath all of that is one silent, aching question. Can I still believe in myself? The answer is yes. But self-trust isn't rebuilt in big, dramatic gestures. It's rebuilt in small, consistent actions that prove to your nervous system, I'm showing up now. I've learned. I'm not abandoning myself again. First, you have to stop confusing failure with identity. Failing at something even massively doesn't mean you are a failure. It means you had a result, one data point, and data can be learned from. What ruins people isn't the fall, it's the shame they wrap around it. If you can extract lessons from your failure instead of labels, you start to take back power. Ask, what did I ignore that I shouldn't have? What red flags did I talk myself out of? What would I do differently now? Those answers aren't to punish yourself. They're to reestablish partnership with yourself, because that's what self-trust really is, an internal partnership. And just like any other relationship, it can be repaired. Second, you must make and keep small promises to yourself. After failure, your self-trust isn't strong enough to believe in massive leaps. That's okay. Start with something simple. I'm going to wake up when I said I would, or I'll write for 10 minutes today, or I won't scroll when I'm anxious. Then do it. No matter how small. Keeping that promise sends a signal to your brain. We follow through now. We do what we say we'll do. Over time, those repetitions compound into confidence. Next, stop waiting for external validation to feel whole again. Yes, support helps. But if you hinge your healing on someone else believing in you first, you stay trapped. Give yourself the validation you crave. Say the words you needed to hear back then. I'm proud of you for trying. You're still worthy. You can learn and come back stronger. Also, get honest about what that failure taught you. Not just in theory, but practically. Did it expose a skill gap? Reveal a toxic pattern? Teach you what kind of people you should never trust again? That's not just pain, that's wisdom. And when you start making decisions from that place, not fear, but wisdom, you become someone you can rely on again. Remind yourself that your past is evidence of growth, not a life sentence. Trust is a muscle, and every time you choose to act in alignment with your values, especially when it's hard, you're strengthening it. You can rebuild self-trust, even after an epic failure, not by being perfect, but by showing up, by listening to your own voice again, by giving yourself a chance to become who you were always meant to be, not in spite of the failure, but because of it. The lies you tell yourself, and how to break them. The lies you tell yourself are the quietest, most convincing barriers between you and the life you're capable of living. These lies don't always sound like lies, they sound like familiar thoughts, internalized voices, old narratives you've heard so often they start to feel like truth. They show up as certainty when you try something new, hesitation when you're about to grow, and self-doubt when you're closest to change. Left unchecked, they become mental walls you mistake for reality. You might tell yourself, "I'm just not the kind of person who follows through," or "I always mess things up," or "I need to feel ready before I act." These aren't facts, they're conclusions drawn from fear, past pain, or a single failure replayed too many times. They were likely formed during moments of embarrassment, rejection, or comparison. And instead of letting those moments pass, you built an identity around them. The most dangerous part of these lies is how logical they sound. "I've never been good at this." That might be historically true, but it's not permanently true unless you keep repeating it. Lies like these are subtle forms of self-sabotage. They lower your standards before you even begin. They convince you to shrink instead of stretch. And they protect you from discomfort while quietly eroding your confidence. To break these lies, you must first become aware of them. Start by noticing the limiting thoughts that surface when you're challenged. Pay attention to the words you use when talking to yourself in hard moments. Do you default to shame? Do you disqualify yourself before you've even tried? Once identified, don't just push these lies aside, interrogate them. Ask yourself, is this true? Who told me this? What evidence do I have that it's still true now? Often, the answers reveal that these beliefs were inherited, not chosen. And if you didn't choose them, you can replace them. The next step is to deliberately replace those lies with truth. Not with wishful thinking or blind optimism, but with grounded, empowering affirmations backed by action. If the lie is, "I never stick with anything," the truth might be, "I've stuck through things before. And every time I follow through today, I rewrite my identity." Then prove it. Keep a promise to yourself. Take the small step you usually avoid. Action is the fastest way to silence internal lies. Also, speak your truth out loud. Write it. Repeat it. Let it become the new default. The mind is shaped by repetition. And the same way you once believed a lie by hearing it often, you can believe the truth by feeding it regularly. Give yourself grace. You will still hear the lies sometimes. But now, you'll recognize them for what they are: old echoes trying to survive in a new chapter. You are not obligated to believe every thought that passes through your mind. You have the power to decide which ones stay. Breaking the lies you tell yourself isn't just about thinking more positively. It's about reclaiming authorship over your identity. You're not broken. You've just been misled by unchallenged thoughts. Challenge them now, replace them, and step into the truth of who you actually are, not who your fears pretend you are. Stop overthinking. Learn to think better, not more. Overthinking is not deep thinking, it's mental noise disguised as analysis. It feels productive because your mind is busy, but in reality, it drains energy, paralyzes decision-making, and often spirals you into anxiety and self-doubt. You replay conversations, second-guess your choices, imagine worst-case scenarios, and try to think your way into certainty. But more thinking doesn't always mean better thinking. In fact, the most powerful mental clarity often comes when you think less but think with more intention. Overthinking is rooted in fear of making the wrong choice, of being judged, of failing, or of not being in control. So the mind tries to compensate by running every possible outcome like a broken simulation. But instead of clarity, you get overwhelmed. You delay action. You lose the moment. And ironically, the longer you think without acting, the more chaotic your thoughts become. To stop overthinking, you need to shift from endless questioning to decisive clarity. Start by recognizing when your thinking has crossed the line from useful to harmful. Helpful thinking moves you forward. Overthinking keeps you stuck. If your mental loop isn't leading to a decision or an action, it's time to interrupt it. One way to do that is by asking, what decision needs to be made here? Give your mind a target. Overthinkers often resist clarity because it requires committing, and commitment feels risky. But indecision is far more exhausting than any mistake. Most progress is built not on perfect choices, but on momentum. You also need to trust that not all thinking happens in your head. Some of it happens in motion. Clarity often comes from doing. Start the conversation. Draft the email. Try the project. Take the step. You don't need a 10-step plan to begin. You need just enough direction to take the first action and then correct as you go. Thinking better means trusting feedback from experience more than just hypotheticals in your mind. Another way to combat overthinking is to externalize your thoughts. Write them down. Speak them out loud. When you see your thoughts on paper, they lose some of their emotional charge. You gain distance and perspective. What felt like a storm becomes something you can sort. The act of journaling or talking to someone you trust turns scattered thinking into structured insight. It's also essential to limit your decision windows. Give yourself deadlines, 7 small ones. I'll decide this by noon. I'll think about this for 10 more minutes, then act. Boundaries help force resolution. Unlimited time creates unlimited worry. Learn to sit with uncertainty. Not every decision will feel 100% safe. That's okay. You are allowed to act with 80% clarity and adjust later. Life rewards movement, not perfection. Thinking better means replacing loops with direction, fear with action, and noise with clarity. Your mind is a powerful tool, but only when it serves your goals instead of your anxieties. Stop trying to control everything by thinking it to death. Instead, breathe, decide, act, adjust. You'll find that peace lives not in more thinking, but in better, braver choices. The power of belief. You become what you rehearse. Belief is not just a thought, it's a mental rehearsal of what you accept as possible, true, or inevitable. The power of belief lies in its ability to shape your identity, influence your decisions, and script your future before it even arrives. Every day, whether consciously or not, you are rehearsing a version of yourself. And the version you rehearse most consistently becomes the one you live out. Think about it. Belief is repetition with emotional weight. When you tell yourself, "I'm not good enough," again and again, your brain begins to hardwire that narrative. You don't need someone else to hold you back. Your own belief will do the job. You'll avoid risks, settle for less, procrastinate, or shrink in moments that require you to rise. Not because you lack potential, but because you've rehearsed a limited version of yourself so many times it feels real. But the opposite is also true. When you choose to rehearse strength, capability, and growth even before you fully see the evidence, your brain begins to adapt. You start making choices that reflect your future, not just your past. You start speaking with more conviction. You walk into opportunities, not just wish for them. Because belief, when rehearsed, rewires your sense of identity, and identity always drives behavior. This is why affirmations, visualization, and identity-based habits work when done with intention. They're not magic, they're training. You're teaching your nervous system and subconscious mind what to expect from you. When you rehearse confidence, you act with more presence. When you rehearse resilience, you bounce back faster. When you rehearse leadership, you start speaking and moving as someone worth following. The key is repetition. Not once, not occasionally, but daily. You can't rehearse greatness in silence and expect to perform it on stage. Just like a musician practices chords, or an athlete repeats drills. You must practice the beliefs that align with who you want to become. But what if the belief feels fake at first? That's normal. You don't believe it because you haven't rehearsed it enough. Think of belief as a muscle. It grows through use, not convenience. And the more emotionally charged the repetition, the more you visualize it, speak it out loud, feel it in your gut, the faster it becomes real. And let's be clear. Belief isn't about ignoring reality. It's about choosing the most empowering version of reality that moves you forward. You can acknowledge your struggle and still believe in your strength. You can face uncertainty and still rehearse courage. The rehearsal doesn't deny what is, it declares what could be. You are becoming what you mentally rehearse every day. Whether it's fear or faith, defeat or determination, limitation or possibility. So ask yourself, what story am I practicing right now? Because belief isn't just an inner feeling, it's a repeated choice that becomes your future identity. And when you consciously choose what to rehearse, you don't just change your mind, you change your life. How to be your own encourager, not your worst critic. Being your own encourager means learning to become the voice that lifts you up, not the one that tears you down. It means replacing the relentless inner critic with an inner coach, someone who speaks to you with strength, compassion, and truth, especially when things go wrong. Most people grow up internalizing criticism more than praise. Over time, they become fluent in self-doubt and self-sabotage, talking to themselves in ways they'd never speak to a friend. And yet, your inner voice becomes the most consistent influence on your confidence, your resilience, and your belief in what's possible. The problem with being your own worst critic is that it doesn't make you better, it makes you smaller. It chips away at your self-worth and convinces you that harshness is the same as discipline. But constant self-judgment doesn't lead to growth. It leads to paralysis, burnout, and shame. You begin to fear mistakes instead of learning from them. You hesitate to take risks, not because you're incapable, but because you dread your own internal reaction if things don't go perfectly. To shift out of this pattern, you must first become aware of it. Pay attention to how you talk to yourself when you fail, fall behind, or feel uncertain. Is your voice kind or cruel? Is it constructive or condemning? Awareness is the first step to transformation. If your inner voice sounds more like a bully than a mentor, it's time to rewrite the script. The second step is to speak to yourself the way you would speak to someone you deeply care about, not with false praise, but with perspective. If your best friend messed up, you wouldn't say, "You're a failure." You'd probably say, "It's okay, you've learned. You can still figure this out." That's the tone your inner voice should carry. Because encouragement isn't about denial, it's about keeping you grounded in your worth, even when your performance doesn't match your expectations. Being your own encourager also means celebrating progress and the small, unglamorous wins. The brain thrives on reinforcement. When you acknowledge effort, not just outcomes, you train your mind to stay motivated and engaged. Say to yourself, "I didn't feel like doing it today, but I showed up." Or, "That wasn't perfect, but I made progress." These small affirmations build momentum. Another powerful practice is to prepare words of encouragement in advance. Write down phrases that center you, things like, "I've done hard things before," or, "This feeling will pass, and I will keep going," or, "I don't need to be perfect to make progress." Rehearse them so they're ready when your inner critic shows up. Don't wait to feel confident. Talk yourself into confidence by speaking powerfully on purpose. It's also crucial to build a new belief system, that you are not your mistakes, your mood, or your worst moment. You are a work in progress. You are becoming. Encouragement recognizes your growth and reminds you that every step forward counts, 7 the wobbly ones. Being your own encourager is not about being naive or avoiding responsibility. It's about showing up for yourself with the same support you wish others would give you. Because no matter how much praise you receive from the outside, if your internal voice is toxic, you'll always find a way to tear yourself down. But when you learn to speak to yourself with strength, compassion, and clarity, you don't just survive challenges, you rise through them. You don't need permission to believe in yourself, you just need practice. So start today. Be the voice that says, "Keep going, you've got this, you're not done yet." That voice will change your life. Chapter 2. Build habits that don't break. Motivation is unreliable. It comes in waves, strong one day, absent the next. You've likely experienced those bursts of inspiration when you feel ready to conquer everything, start a new habit, commit to a goal, change your life. But a few days later, the energy fades. Reality gets heavy. The initial spark dims. That's when most people quit, not because they're lazy or incapable, but because they were relying on motivation to carry them. The truth is, motivation is fleeting, systems aren't. Motivation is emotional. It's influenced by your mood, environment, energy, and circumstances. It's great when it shows up, but it's unreliable as a long-term strategy. Systems, on the other hand, are dependable. A system is a structure, a routine, a process, a set of steps that you follow regardless of how you feel. It doesn't care if you're tired, uninspired, or having a rough day. It just says, "This is what we do." Systems remove the need for constant decision-making. When you rely on motivation, every day is a question. Do I feel like doing this? That question is exhausting. And if the answer is no often enough, your progress collapses. But when you have a system, the question disappears. You don't have to feel like doing it. You just do it because it's built into your life. Systems create consistency, and consistency is what creates results. Take a writer, for example. A motivated writer writes when they're inspired. A disciplined writer has a system. They sit down every day at 7 a.m., write for 90 minutes, and stop. Over time, the disciplined writer will always outperform the motivated one. Why? Because the system makes the process sustainable. This applies to everything: fitness, productivity, self-growth, business, relationships. Want to work out more? Don't wait for motivation. Create a system. Set your clothes out the night before. Schedule workouts in your calendar. Automate accountability with a partner or app. Want to read more? Place the book by your bed. Commit to 10 pages before sleep. Track your progress. Small, repeatable systems beat big, emotional intentions every time. Another benefit of systems is that they reduce resistance. The more you automate your habits, the less mental energy it takes to start. You don't waste time negotiating with yourself, you follow the pattern. It's like brushing your teeth. You don't need motivation for it, you just do it. That's what strong systems do. They normalize the behaviors that move your life forward. And ironically, once you build systems, motivation actually shows up more often. When you see yourself sticking to a habit, you feel proud. You see progress. You prove to yourself that you follow through. That's real motivation, the kind that grows from consistency, not emotion. So don't chase motivation. Build systems. Let discipline drive your days, not your feelings. Because the version of you that succeeds isn't the one waiting to feel ready. It's the one who sets a plan, sticks to it, and keeps showing up, no matter what. Systems are how you win, especially on the days motivation disappears. Start smaller. The secret to lasting discipline. Lasting discipline doesn't begin with big leaps, it begins with small, consistent steps. Most people fail to build discipline not because they lack willpower, but because they start too big. They try to overhaul their entire life overnight, expecting perfection from day one. But when the momentum fades or life gets messy, they burn out, get discouraged, and quit. That's because discipline isn't built on intensity, it's built on sustainability. And the secret to sustainability is this: start smaller. Starting small feels counterintuitive, especially when you're driven to change. You want to lose the weight, write the book, transform your routine fast, but discipline is like a muscle. You don't start lifting 200 pounds on day one. You start with what your current identity and habits can handle. You build consistency, then you increase the weight. When you start small, you reduce resistance. There's less internal negotiation, less fear of failure, and fewer excuses. Want to get in shape? Commit to 10 minutes of movement instead of an hour-long workout. Want to develop a writing habit? Start with 100 words a day, not a full chapter. Want to meditate? Start with one deep breath. These actions may seem insignificant, but they build something more powerful than a result. They build identity. They teach your mind, I am someone who shows up. And once you show up consistently, even in small ways, discipline becomes who you are, not something you try to force. The action itself becomes a cue, a trigger for future behavior. That's how you create momentum. And momentum is what turns a 2-minute habit into a lifelong transformation. The other benefit of starting small is that it creates psychological wins. Every time you follow through, you build self-trust. You prove to yourself that you can keep a promise, and that creates a positive feedback loop. The more you trust yourself, the more likely you are to keep going. Over time, that self-trust is worth more than any burst of motivation. People often dismiss small efforts as not serious enough. But the truth is, the smallest consistent effort outperforms grand but inconsistent efforts every time. It's not the size of the action that matters, it's the fact that you did it today and you'll do it again tomorrow. Consistency compounds. And when you start small, you also become more resilient. If life disrupts your routine, which it will, a smaller habit is easier to maintain or return to. Discipline isn't about being perfect. It's about staying close to your goal, even when things aren't ideal. Small habits give you that flexibility. Starting small isn't a lack of ambition, it's a commitment to mastery. It's saying, I care enough about this goal to build it on solid ground. So resist the urge to go all in overnight. Instead, go small on purpose. Build your discipline like you're building a fire. Start with a spark, feed it slowly, and let it grow into something that lasts, because that's how real change is made. Stack wins, not pressure. Discipline thrives on momentum, not pressure. And the fastest way to build momentum is to stack wins, not stress. Most people try to force transformation by putting themselves under heavy pressure. Strict routines, rigid rules, unrealistic goals. They think if they push hard enough, they'll break through. But pressure without progress leads to burnout, shame, and quitting. It makes every step feel like a test rather than a win. That's why the key to lasting growth is simple but powerful. Stack wins, not pressure. A win doesn't have to be huge. In fact, the smaller and more consistent the win, the more powerful it becomes. A win can be getting out of bed without snoozing, drinking a glass of water first thing in the morning, saying no to a distraction, showing up for 5 minutes. Every time you follow through on something you said you would do, no matter how minor, you're casting a vote for the kind of person you want to become. Those votes accumulate. They shift your identity. They reinforce discipline without draining you. When you focus on wins, you build confidence. You see progress. You prove to yourself that forward movement is possible. That creates emotional momentum, which leads to more action. But when you only focus on pressure, what's left to do? What you're not doing enough of. You train your brain to associate growth with failure. The result? Avoidance, procrastination, and self-sabotage. Pressure says, you have to get everything right now. Wins say, look at what you just did, keep going. Stacking wins also rewires your relationship with effort. Instead of chasing perfection, you start aiming for consistency. You don't have to wait until conditions are ideal. You just have to show up in a way that's doable, repeatable, and meaningful. And when things get tough, that mindset keeps you grounded. You're not trying to be perfect, you're just looking for your next win. Here's how to start stacking wins in real life. Lower the bar, raise the standard. Make your goals easier to start, but commit fully once you begin. Track your wins. Keep a small journal or checklist of what you complete each day. Let that become proof of progress. Celebrate without exaggerating. You don't need a parade. Just acknowledge the effort. I showed up. That counts. Don't measure by the hour, measure by the action. 5 minutes of focus beats an hour of delay. One honest conversation beats days of avoidance. Build a streak. Focus on not breaking the chain. Whether it's 3 days or 30, the streak becomes motivation in itself. Remember, the mind follows where energy flows. When you focus on what's working, you invite more of it. When you obsess over pressure, your brain resists. So take the weight off. Stop chasing pressure as proof that you're doing something meaningful. Instead, let your small, consistent wins do the heavy lifting. This is how people change with pressure, but with steady, quiet progress. Not by proving their worth through suffering, but by proving their strength through showing up. Stack wins. Stack belief. Stack momentum. That's the foundation discipline is built on, and it's how you make progress that actually lasts. Train yourself to be consistent, even on hard days. Consistency is the bridge between intention and transformation. Anyone can start strong, but those who finish are the ones who learn to keep showing up, especially when it's hard. The truth is, most of your progress will be determined not by what you do on your best days, but by what you're still willing to do on your worst. That's why learning to be consistent even on hard days is one of the most valuable skills you can build. Hard days are inevitable. You'll be tired, overwhelmed, distracted, discouraged. Life will throw surprises, discomfort, and resistance at you. If your commitment only survives when it's convenient, it's not really commitment, it's just preference. Discipline doesn't mean you always feel motivated or joyful. It means you've built a foundation so solid that your behavior stays aligned with your goals, regardless of how you feel in the moment. To train for consistency on hard days, start by redefining success. Don't aim for perfect execution, aim for presence. If you normally work out for an hour, maybe you just stretch for 10 minutes. If you usually write a full page, maybe today it's just a sentence. This is not lowering your standards, it's honoring your process. Small actions maintain your momentum. They keep the habit alive. And most importantly, they train your mind to associate identity with effort, not ease. Consistency also requires removing decision fatigue. On hard days, your brain will search for any excuse to skip. That's why you must reduce friction. Prepare in advance. Lay out your clothes the night before. Schedule reminders. Automate your routines so they require minimal willpower. When life feels heavy, let your structure carry you. Another powerful strategy is to create a minimum baseline. Decide ahead of time what your non-negotiables or tiny actions that you'll commit to no matter what. Even if you're sick, tired, or emotionally drained. Maybe it's 5 minutes of journaling, a glass of water, a 60-second pause before reacting. These aren't meant to create huge gains. They're meant to preserve your identity as someone who shows up, and that identity is what keeps you anchored when everything else feels shaky. Also, learn to separate discomfort from failure. Just because something feels hard doesn't mean it's wrong. In fact, The most meaningful growth happens when you move forward in spite of resistance. That moment when you don't feel like it but you do it anyway? That's where discipline is built. That's when you're rewiring your brain to act from commitment, not comfort. Be kind to yourself. Consistency isn't about perfection. It's about return. You will slip. You will miss days. That's part of the process. What matters most is how quickly you return to your rhythm. The people who succeed aren't the ones who never stumble, they're the ones who always get back up. When you train yourself to be consistent on the hard days, you become unshakable. You prove to yourself that discipline isn't something you rely on, it's something you embody. And that consistency, stacked over time, becomes unstoppable momentum. Because the path to any goal isn't made up of perfect days, it's built on all the hard ones you didn't skip. How to stay committed when no one's watching. Staying committed when no one's watching is the ultimate test of integrity. It's easy to show up when there's applause, validation, or accountability. But true commitment lives in the quiet moments, early mornings, late nights, behind closed doors where no one sees the effort but you. It's in those private choices that character is forged and success is built. Because what you do when no one's watching determines who you become when everyone is. At the heart of this is internal motivation. External accountability might help you start, but only internal standards will help you sustain. When you're driven by a sense of personal responsibility, when your word to yourself means something, you don't need permission or praise. You act because it's who you are, not because someone else is checking in. This requires cultivating self-respect. Every time you follow through on a promise to yourself, you're telling your mind, I can trust me. That trust is your foundation. It's built one decision at a time. When you do the workout no one asked for, read the book no one will praise you for finishing, or make the disciplined choice when no one's there to applaud. Those moments feel small in real time, but they compound. They build an identity you can rely on. To stay committed in private, create rituals and systems that support your values, not your moods. Don't leave your actions up to how you feel. Decide in advance what you will do and when. Treat your commitments like appointments you can't cancel. Rituals anchor you. They remove the daily debate and preserve energy for execution. Also, make your why visible. When no one's around, your reasons must be stronger than your excuses. Write down your vision, post it where you'll see it. Remind yourself daily what's at stake and who you're becoming. The more you emotionally connect to your purpose, the less you'll need motivation to stick with it. It also helps to track your progress, even if it's just for you. Use a notebook, an app, or a wall calendar. Seeing evidence of your own consistency builds momentum. You begin to associate effort with progress, even when results aren't instantly visible. It becomes a silent reward system. Your wins are personal, private, and powerful. But perhaps most importantly, decide what kind of person you are when no one is watching. Are you someone who cuts corners unless supervised? Or are you someone who leads themselves with honor? Your actions answer that question daily. Integrity isn't about being watched, it's about being whole. When you act in alignment with your highest standards in private, you never have to pretend in public. And when setbacks come, they will, don't use the lack of an audience as an excuse to give up. Use it as fuel. You're not invisible. You're investing. Every quiet act of discipline becomes part of your foundation. And when the spotlight does come, when the results begin to show, people will wonder how you did it. The answer will always be, I stayed committed, even when no one was watching. That's the kind of strength no one can take from you. And that's the kind of discipline that doesn't just get noticed, it gets remembered. Chapter 3. Communicate with courage and clarity. Speaking to be understood rather than just heard is the difference between noise and impact. In a world full of voices competing for attention, it's easy to fall into the trap of speaking more, louder, or faster thinking that volume or frequency equals clarity. But communication isn't about how much you say, it's about how deeply it's received. If your words don't land, they don't lead. And if your listener doesn't understand you, your message might as well not exist. When you speak just to be heard, the focus is on your expression. When you speak to be understood, the focus shifts to the listener's experience. That means slowing down, choosing your words carefully, and speaking with the intention of connection, not just delivery. Clarity becomes more important than cleverness. Simplicity becomes more powerful than sophistication. To speak clearly, you must first know what you're trying to say. Vagueness creates confusion. If your thoughts are scattered or overcomplicated, your message will be too. Before you speak, whether in a meeting, conversation, or public setting, pause and ask, what do I want them to take away from this? This guiding question forces you to focus and prioritize your message. Next, consider your audience. Effective communicators don't just speak truth, they tailor it to the person in front of them. That doesn't mean changing your values. It means changing your delivery. What does this person care about? What language or examples will resonate with them? Understanding your listener allows you to frame your message in a way that makes it easier for them to absorb. Tone matters just as much as content. If your tone is rushed, defensive, or robotic, it can drown out your words. A calm, intentional tone invites people to lean in. It signals confidence and thoughtfulness. Your body language, facial expressions, and pacing should support, not compete with your message. Even silence, when used with intention, can be powerful. A well-placed pause gives your words space to breathe and your listener time to process. You also need to eliminate unnecessary clutter. Filler words, vague qualifiers, and over-explaining can dilute your message. Instead of saying, I kind of think that maybe we should probably try to, say, let's try this. Direct language is not harsh, it's helpful. It respects the listener's time and attention. To ensure you've been understood, seek feedback. You can ask, does that make sense? Or, what's your takeaway from this? True communicators don't just speak, they confirm connection. They're not satisfied until the message has landed clearly and meaningfully. The goal isn't to impress with your wordsits, to transfer an idea from your mind to someone else's in the most effective way possible. That requires humility, clarity, and empathy. It's not about speaking louder. It's about speaking smarter. The most influential voices are not those who talk the most, but those who communicate with purpose, simplicity, and heart. Don't just speak to be heard, speak to be understood. That's where real influence begins. Silence the inner people pleaser. Silencing the inner people pleaser is one of the most powerful steps towards self-respect and authentic living. That inner voice, the one that constantly seeks approval, fears rejection, and tries to manage everyone else's comfort at the expense of your own, can quietly rule your life if left unchecked. It convinces you that your worth is tied to how likable, agreeable, or accommodating you are. But people-pleasing, while often masked as kindness, is rooted in fear. And living in fear is no way to lead a fulfilling, self-directed life. The people-pleaser inside you isn't trying to ruin your life, it's trying to protect you. Somewhere along the way, you learned that keeping others happy made you safer. Maybe it was growing up in a home where approval was conditional, or being taught that saying no is selfish, or just the belief that conflict equals failure. Over time, you became hyper-aware of others' reactions, anticipating their needs, adjusting your truth, and shrinking your own desires to avoid discomfort. But that survival strategy becomes a prison when you no longer know where your identity ends and others' expectations begin. To silence that voice, you must first recognize when it speaks. It often sounds like, what if they get mad at me? I don't want to disappoint them. I should just say yes to keep the peace. It thrives on guilt, anxiety, and a fear of being misunderstood. The antidote is truth, not just external truth, but your internal truth. You have the right to want what you want. You have the right to take up space. You are not responsible for everyone else's emotional state. That clarity is not cruel, it's courageous. Silencing the people-pleaser doesn't mean becoming selfish or insensitive. It means learning to honor yourself in the same way you've been trained to honor others. That might look like saying no when it's uncomfortable, setting boundaries without apologizing, speaking up when you disagree, prioritizing your needs without justification. It might feel unnatural or even scary at first, but that's how you reclaim your power. You also need to redefine your sense of value. If your worth is based on how useful, agreeable, or self-sacrificing you are, you'll always be negotiating your identity. Real self-worth is unconditional. You matter even when someone's disappointed in you. You're still enough even if someone misjudges your intention, and you're allowed to set limits without offering an explanation. Another important step is learning to sit with discomfort. People-pleasing often comes from a fear of emotional tension, awkward silences, disapproval, conflict. But discomfort is not danger. Let someone misunderstand you. Let them be briefly uncomfortable. Your job is not to manage their feelings, it's to stay aligned with your values. That's how emotional adulthood begins. Practice saying no with kindness but firmness. Practice not over-explaining. Practice pausing before you agree to something out of reflex. Each time you resist the urge to overplease, you build the muscle of self-trust. And don't wait to feel ready. The people-pleaser won't disappear overnight. But every time you act from self-respect instead of fear, that voice gets quieter. Over time, your life becomes less about appeasing others and more about honoring yourself. Because the truth is, the world doesn't need a version of you watered down to keep the peace. It needs your full presence, your honest voice, and your grounded no, just as much as your generous yes. Silencing the inner people-pleaser isn't the end of your kindness, it's the beginning of your freedom. Say what you mean without regret. Saying what you mean without regret is one of the clearest signs of maturity, confidence, and inner alignment. It means expressing your thoughts, feelings, and needs honestly, without aggression, apology, or manipulation. It means no longer rehearsing conversations in your head, worrying endlessly about how others will perceive you, or carrying the heavy weight of things you should have said. When you learn to speak with clarity and conviction, you stop betraying yourself to keep others comfortable and you start building a life that reflects your truth. Many people struggle with this because they were taught that honesty causes conflict. Maybe you learned early on that being direct made others uncomfortable. Maybe you were punished for speaking up or told that good people don't rock the boat. As a result, you began filtering your words, watering down your truth, or remaining silent altogether. Over time, you became fluent in indirectness, saying what sounds right instead of what feels right. But silence and avoidance carry a cost. Every time you bite your tongue to keep the peace, a little piece of your authenticity erodes. Saying what you mean doesn't mean saying everything that's on your mind or delivering truth without tact. It means choosing words that are honest and responsible. It means delivering truth with kindness, not cruelty. You can be firm without being harsh. You can be clear without being cold. The goal isn't to dominate the conversation, it's to own your voice without betraying it. To develop this skill, you must first get clear with yourself. Know what you actually think and feel before you try to communicate it. Are you speaking from reaction or reflection? From ego or from grounded awareness? Speaking clearly starts with thinking clearly. Take a moment to check in with your motives before you speak. Am I saying this to connect or just to defend? Am I trying to inform or to impress? When your intention is clean, your words will be too. Next, remove the unnecessary fluff. Say what you mean with simplicity. Instead of circling around your point with disclaimers or justifications, speak directly. I need more time. That doesn't work for me. I disagree, and here's why. These phrases are powerful because they're honest. They leave less room for confusion or resentment. People may not always agree with you, but they will trust you more. A big part of speaking without regret is letting go of control over how people receive your truth. You can't control their feelings, their interpretations, or their reactions, but you can control your integrity. You can speak in a way that reflects respect for them and for yourself. If you communicate with clarity and care, and someone still responds poorly, that's not your responsibility. Your job is to speak your truth, not to babysit someone else's discomfort. Learning to speak up also means accepting the tension that honesty can bring. There will be awkward moments. There will be people who don't like your boundaries, but clarity is kinder than pretending. Speaking up may cost you comfort, but staying silent can cost you yourself. Trust your voice. You've spent enough time holding it back, second-guessing it, diluting it. You don't need to be perfect to speak with power. You just need to be present-rooted in who you are and what matters to you. When you say what you mean, you build a life of fewer misunderstandings, fewer regrets, and deeper respect. You stop carrying the invisible weight of unspoken thoughts. You become the kind of person who lives in alignment where your words, actions, and values all speak the same language. That's real power. Not just to be heard, but to be understood, to be authentic, and to be free. Boundaries are self-respect in action. Boundaries are not walls, they're bridges to healthier relationships, clearer communication, and a stronger sense of self. They are the visible expression of invisible self-respect. When you set a boundary, you're not pushing others away, you're honoring your own needs, energy, and values. Boundaries are how you teach people what's acceptable and what's not, where you begin and where they end. And most importantly, boundaries are how you protect your peace without needing anyone's permission. People often avoid setting boundaries out of fear of rejection, conflict, or disappointing others. But the truth is, every time you say yes when you mean no, you abandon yourself to please someone else. That silent self-abandonment builds resentment over time. You might think you're keeping the peace, but inside, you're slowly eroding your own integrity. Boundaries stop that pattern. They draw the line between being kind and being used, between being generous and being depleted. Setting boundaries starts with self-awareness. You can't set a clear line if you don't know where you stand. Begin by noticing when something feels off, when your body tightens, when you're drained after a conversation, when you agree to something but feel irritated afterward. These are signals. They tell you where a boundary is needed. Next comes communication. Boundaries are only as effective as they are expressed. That means using your voice. Not aggressively, but directly. It could sound like, "I'm not available for that right now. Please don't speak to me that way. I need time to think before I commit." Clarity is kindness. When you communicate boundaries with calm firmness, you avoid confusion and stop problems before they spiral. But don't expect everyone to applaud your boundaries. Some people benefit from your lack of them. They may push back, test your limits, or make you feel guilty. That's not a sign you're doing it wrong. That's a sign the boundary is working. Stay steady. Let their discomfort be theirs to manage. You're not being difficult. You're being responsible for yourself. Boundaries are also not just about saying no. They're about creating space for your yes to mean something. They allow you to prioritize what truly matters, give your best energy where it's needed, and show up more fully because you're no longer operating from burnout. In this way, boundaries don't limit your life, they expand it. You'll also find that the more you respect your own boundaries, the more others will too. You teach people how to treat you by the standards you uphold. If you constantly bend, they'll assume that's the norm. But when you stay consistent, firm, and respectful, you raise the standard not just for how others treat you, but for how you treat yourself. Boundaries are not selfish, they are sacred. They are a declaration. I matter. My time matters. My energy matters. My peace matters. And when you live by that truth, you stop chasing validation, you start standing in your worth. Boundaries are not about keeping others out. They're about inviting the right people in, those who respect your limits, honor your truth, and love you for who you are, not just for what you give. That's not just self-respect in action. That's self-love in motion. Feedback, conflict, and owning your voice. Feedback and conflict are two of the most emotionally charged aspects of communication, but they're also two of the most powerful opportunities for growth. Most people fear them. We worry about being judged, misunderstood, or exposed. We fear hurting others or being hurt ourselves. But learning to navigate feedback and conflict with maturity, clarity, and confidence is essential if you want to truly own your voice. Owning your voice means speaking your truth, not to dominate, not to defend, but to stand in alignment with who you are. It means you don't shrink in the face of disagreement, and you don't inflate to control the conversation. You stay grounded. You speak honestly, even when it's uncomfortable. And, most importantly, you listen with the same respect you expect in return. When it comes to feedback, especially criticism, it's easy to get reactive. Your ego wants to protect you. It might reject the message, attack the messenger, or spiral into shame. But feedback is rarely about your worth, it's about your growth. Not all feedback is valid, but almost all of it carries something useful. If you learn to listen for the lesson rather than the tone, you'll grow faster, communicate better, and become more resilient. That doesn't mean you blindly accept all criticism. It means you evaluate it with maturity, extract what's helpful, and leave the rest without internalizing it. Receiving feedback well requires a shift in mindset, from defensive to curious. Instead of asking, "How dare they say that?" ask, "Is there truth here that I'm resisting?" Owning your voice doesn't mean being immune to correction. It means being strong enough to receive it without losing yourself. Conflict is another area where many people lose their voice. They avoid it altogether, hoping issues will resolve themselves or they explode, driven by emotion rather than intention. But conflict is not inherently bad. It's not a sign of failure. In fact, when handled well, conflict can deepen trust, create clarity, and lead to better solutions. The goal isn't to win the argument, it's to understand and be understood. To engage in healthy conflict, speak from your experience, not from accusation. Use language that takes responsibility. "Here's how I feel," rather than, "You always." Stay anchored in facts, not assumptions, and stay connected to your values. If your goal is truth and respect, your tone and words will reflect that, even in tension. Most importantly, don't abandon your voice just to avoid discomfort. People-pleasing in conflict might preserve surface peace, but it breeds silent resentment and miscommunication. You don't have to yell to be powerful. You don't have to dominate to be heard. You just have to stay honest, calm, and consistent. Sometimes, owning your voice also means giving feedback. That's not easy. It requires courage and care. But when done with compassion, feedback becomes a gift. It says, "I care enough about you and this relationship to tell the truth." The key is to balance clarity with kindness, not sugarcoating the truth, but not weaponizing it either. Your voice is your most important tool for connection, leadership, and self-respect. Don't silence it to make others comfortable. Don't overuse it to drown out insecurity. use it with wisdom, use it with integrity, and, when the moment calls for courage, speak up, not to impress, not to argue, but to stay loyal to who you are and what matters to you. Because real communication isn't about avoiding conflict, it's about building trust in the presence of it. And that starts when you decide your voice is worth hearing, even when it shakes. Chapter 4. Own your time, energy, and focus. We're often told that time management is the key to success. We make schedules, use planners, download apps, and try to squeeze more into each hour. But here's the truth. It's not your time that determines your results, it's your attention. You can have all the time in the world, but if your mind is scattered, distracted, or overwhelmed, you won't make progress. On the other hand, even a short burst of focused attention can move your life forward in powerful ways. Managing time gives the illusion of control. It makes you feel productive because your calendar looks full. But productivity without intentional focus is just motion without meaning. That's why people can work 8 hours and still feel like they got nothing done. It's not because they lacked time, it's because their attention was fragmented. Your attention is your most valuable currency. Where it goes, your energy flows. And where your energy flows, your life is shaped. So if you want to make real progress, shift your question from, how can I fit more in, to, what truly deserves my attention right now? This small shift can radically improve how you work, think, and live. The first step is awareness. Notice where your attention leaks throughout the day. Is it pulled by constant notifications? Drained by multitasking? Hijacked by worries or regrets? Your mind, left unmanaged, will default to distraction. To regain control, you must protect your focus zones, the times when your brain is sharpest and your goals need the most clarity. One of the most powerful tools for managing attention is single tasking. Multitasking might feel productive, but in reality, it fractures your focus and decreases cognitive efficiency. Instead, give your full attention to one task at a time. Close tabs, silence your phone. Set a timer if needed. Treat your attention like sacred space, not something to be traded for cheap stimulation. Another way to protect your attention is by creating boundaries for your mental bandwidth. That means saying no to things that don't align with your priorities. It means taking breaks to recharge your brain, not to escape it. And it means designing your environment to reduce friction, turning off alerts, tidying your workspace, and surrounding yourself with cues that support presence rather than distraction. Routines also help train your attention. Morning rituals, focus hours, reflection time, these aren't just habits, they're anchors. They signal to your brain, this is where we pay attention. This is what matters now. And don't forget to manage your internal distractions, too. A wandering mind is often a stressed or overstimulated one. Practice grounding techniques, deep breathing, journaling, meditation to calm the mental noise. The quieter your inner world, the more clearly you can direct your attention outward. Success doesn't belong to those who are the busiest. It belongs to those who can focus deeply on what matters most. Time is finite. You can't create more of it. But attention? That's renewable when trained, protected, and directed with purpose. So stop chasing the illusion of perfect time management. Start mastering the skill that truly shapes your results. The ability to hold your focus in your work, your relationships, your goals, and your vision. Because the quality of your attention will always define the quality of your life. Eliminate what drains you. Eliminating what drains you is not just about reducing stress, it's about reclaiming your power. Every day, your energy is pulled in dozens of directions. By people, tasks, thoughts, habits, and environments. Some of these add value and momentum. Others slowly chip away at your clarity, motivation, and well-being. The difference between a life of intention and one of exhaustion often comes down to what you allow to remain in your mental, emotional, and physical space. Drains are rarely loud or obvious. They're often disguised as just being polite, doing what's expected, or pushing through. It might be a toxic relationship you keep tolerating out of guilt, a commitment that no longer serves you, a habit that once helped you cope but now keeps you stuck. Even clutter, digital, mental, or physical, can silently drain your energy every day without you realizing it. To eliminate what drains you, you must first identify it. This requires brutal honesty. Ask yourself, what do I dread before it even starts? What leaves me feeling empty, anxious, or resentful? What do I keep doing out of obligation, not alignment? Pay attention to your body's tension, fatigue, tightness in your chest or jaw. Your nervous system knows what your conscious mind tries to ignore. Once you've named your drains, the next step is to stop justifying them. You don't owe anyone your peace. You don't need permission to protect your energy. You don't have to keep proving your worth by overextending yourself. Let go of the stories that keep you stuck, like, I have to, they'll be upset, or I can't afford to disappoint. These are often fear-based excuses dressed up as duty. Then, begin cutting, reducing, or redesigning what you can. That might mean ending or distancing yourself from draining relationships, saying no to things that deplete you even if you used to say yes. Unsubscribing, decluttering, delegating, redefining how much access people have to your time and attention. You don't have to eliminate everything overnight. But every small boundary you set creates space for what energizes you. Some drains can't be removed entirely, like a demanding job or a challenging family dynamic. In those cases, focus on how you engage with them. Can you shift your mindset? Can you limit exposure? Can you create buffers, moments of solitude, deep breathing, or journaling that help you reset after difficult interactions? Energy management is as much about recovery as it is about removal. Importantly, when you eliminate what drains you, you create the capacity to pursue what fuels you. You have more bandwidth to focus, create, love, and grow. You stop merely surviving your day and start leading it. You feel lighter, clearer, more grounded. And that shift affects every area of your life, from your work performance to your relationships to your inner peace. The truth is, you don't need more hours in the day. You need fewer leaks in your energy. What drains you defines what drives you, because whatever you tolerate becomes what you normalize. So, don't normalize burnout. Don't normalize living on edge or under pressure. Start noticing what's not working. Start subtracting what steals your spark. And remind yourself, protecting your energy isn't selfish, it's strategic. It's how you stay powerful, present, and fully alive. Create a life you don't need to escape from. Creating a life you don't need to escape from is not about having a perfect existence. It's about building one that feels real, meaningful, and aligned with who you are. It's waking up without dread, moving through your day without counting down the hours until it's over, and going to bed with a sense of quiet fulfillment instead of emotional exhaustion. It's about designing a life that energizes you more than it drains you, a life that doesn't constantly require distraction, vacations, or fantasy to feel bearable. For many people, escape becomes the default. They escape through endless scrolling, binge-watching, drinking, overworking, or fantasizing about a future they never take steps toward. They spend their days tolerating routines they hate, people who deplete them, and habits that numb them. Then they medicate that emptiness with temporary pleasure, only to wake up to the same reality the next day. The problem isn't the need for rest or fun. The problem is when escapism becomes the only relief from a life that doesn't feel like your own. To build a life you don't want to escape, you must start with radical honesty. Ask yourself, What am I tolerating? What part of my life feels fake, forced, or unlivable? What am I doing because I should, not because I actually care? When you get honest, you often find that the life you're living was shaped by other people's expectations, outdated beliefs, or decisions made in fear, not freedom. From there, the next step is alignment. A life worth living reflects your values, not your programming. That means taking small, consistent steps toward what matters to you. Not what's impressive, not what's secure, but what feels deeply true. That might mean changing careers, even if it pays less but gives you back your peace. It might mean ending a relationship, even if it looks good on paper but drains your soul. It might mean reclaiming your health, your boundaries, your creativity, whatever parts of you got buried under survival mode. It's also about learning to find joy in the everyday, not just in the escape. This doesn't require dramatic changes. It starts with creating moments that feel like you. A morning routine that grounds you. A workspace that reflects your personality. Time carved out for passion projects. Walks that clear your mind. Meals that nourish instead of numb. These seemingly small shifts add up to a life that feels lived, not endured. Creating a life you don't want to escape also means healing, not just fixing. Often, what drives escapism is unresolved pain, traumas, regrets, insecurities. The work here is internal, learning to face discomfort instead of avoiding it, to sit with emotions instead of burying them, to build inner safety instead of outsourcing it. Because no matter how beautiful your external life becomes, if your inner world is chaotic, you'll always look for the nearest exit. And remember, this is a process, not a destination. You don't suddenly arrive at a perfect life. You build it moment by moment, choice by choice. Some days will still be hard. You'll still need rest and breaks. But the goal is that your life, even on difficult days, feels like yours. It feels like something you're choosing, not just surviving. You deserve a life that doesn't require escape routes. One where joy isn't only found on weekends. One where you're not counting down the hours, but living within them. A life you don't run from, because it finally feels like home. Focus like your future depends on it, because it does. Focus like your future depends on it, because it does. In a world of endless noise, infinite distractions, and constant stimulation, your ability to direct your attention is no longer just a helpful skill. It's a form of survival. Focus is the difference between progress and paralysis, between drifting aimlessly and building a life with intention. If you want to change your life, change where your mind goes when things get quiet. That's where your future begins. Most people don't lose to failure. They lose to distraction. They don't lack talent or potential. They simply can't hold their attention long enough to activate it. They chase quick hits of dopamine, bounce between tasks, scroll for hours, and wonder why they feel stuck, scattered, or behind. The truth is harsh but clear. If you don't learn to control your focus, the world will control it for you. Your focus determines your direction. What you consistently think about becomes what you act on. What you act on becomes your habits. And your habits become your identity. That's why building a meaningful future requires more than dreams or motivation. It requires the mental discipline to return your attention to what matters, over and over again, even when the world offers easier, shinier alternatives. This kind of focus doesn't come naturally in the digital age. We're trained to crave distraction. Social media, notifications, constant multitaskings, they rewire our brains to expect interruption. So if you want to reclaim your mind, you have to train it. You have to build focus the way an athlete builds muscle, with consistency, resistance, and repetition. Start small. Choose one task and give it your full attention for just 15 minutes. No checking your phone, no toggling tabs, no background noise. It will feel uncomfortable at first. That's the withdrawal from your addiction to distraction. But with time, your mental endurance grows. You'll be able to go longer, go deeper, and think clearer. Structure your environment to help you succeed. Create a space that supports focus, not fragments it. Turn off what you don't need. Organize your tools. Schedule time blocks where deep work is the only priority. Make distraction harder to access and clarity easier to return to. You are not weak. You're just operating in an environment designed to make you reactive. Change the setting, and you change the results. Also, protect your mental energy. Focus is a limited resource. Don't waste it on things that don't move you forward. Say no to what isn't aligned. Stop chasing every idea. Prioritize what builds, not just what entertains. Your future isn't shaped by how much you do, it's shaped by how well you do what matters most. And when focus gets hard, as it always will, remember your why. You're not just trying to get through the day. You're building a life, a vision, a future self who will either thank you or resent you for what you paid attention to today. So focus like your future depends on it, because it does. Every minute you reclaim your mind is a minute invested in your power, your peace, and your purpose. Attention is the seed. Your future is the harvest. Don't let distractions steal your destiny. Align your daily actions with your bigger purpose. Aligning your daily actions with your bigger purpose is one of the most powerful decisions you can make. It transforms how you move through life, from reactive to intentional, from scattered to focused, from busy to fulfilled. Without alignment, even hard work can feel empty. But with it, even the simplest task gains meaning. When what you do each day matches what you truly care about, you stop chasing significance and start living it. Most people live in two worlds, the life they have and the life they want. In between is the gap of misalignment. They say they want to be healthy, but their daily choices don't support that. They dream of financial freedom, but waste hours scrolling or procrastinating. They want to make an impact, but never make time to develop their voice or gifts. The disconnect isn't about capability, it's about consistency with purpose. To align your actions with your purpose, you must first define what that purpose actually is. This doesn't have to be a dramatic, once-in-a-lifetime revelation. Your purpose is often found where your values, strengths, and passions intersect. It's what energizes you. It's the kind of work or contribution that, when you're doing it, you feel alive, useful, and grounded. Maybe it's serving others, creating beauty, solving problems, raising strong children, telling the truth. Whatever it is, make it clear, write it down, speak it out, let it guide your decisions. Then, zoom into your daily life. Ask yourself, does how I spend my time reflect what I say I value? Do my habits support or sabotage my purpose? This is where real change begins, not in grand gestures, but in the ordinary moments. Choosing to read instead of scroll, saying no to distractions, starting the project, making the call, writing the paragraph. These small actions, repeated over time, build a life of alignment. You also need to plan on purpose. Don't just fill your calendar, filter it. Block time for what truly matters before the world decides for you. Protect your focus, your energy, and your attention like the assets they are. You can't live a purpose-driven life if you're constantly reacting to other people's priorities. It's also vital to recognize when you drift. No one is perfectly aligned all the time, but the goal is awareness and correction. When you notice yourself slipping into autopilot or misaligned patterns, don't spiral, adjust. Ask, what would the version of me who's aligned with my purpose do right now? Then do that. One small decision at a time. Living in alignment isn't always easy. It requires sacrifice, You may have to let go of comfort, approval, or short-term pleasure. But what you gain is depth, a sense of integrity between who you are and how you show up. Your confidence grows. Your results compound. You stop needing external motivation because your life becomes the motivation. Purpose isn't something you stumble upon. It's something you live into through thousands of daily choices. And when your actions and your values walk hand in hand, you no longer feel divided. You feel whole, grounded, fulfilled. So start aligning not someday, but today. Let your calendar reflect your calling. Let your habits speak your values. Let your days become proof that your life is not a random series of events, it's a reflection of your purpose in motion. Chapter 5. Lead yourself first. Discipline equals self-trust. It's not just about willpower or forcing yourself to do hard things, it's about becoming someone you can rely on. Every time you say you'll do something and actually follow through, you build trust with yourself. And that trust becomes the foundation for confidence, progress, and real change. When you're disciplined, you stop doubting your ability to show up. You stop negotiating with excuses. You stop needing external motivation because you know you follow through. Most people misunderstand discipline. They think it's rigid, joyless, or only for the ultra-committed. But in truth, discipline is freedom. It frees you from the chaos of procrastination, the regret of missed opportunities, and the anxiety of inconsistency. It gives you a roadmap instead of a roller coaster. With discipline, you don't have to wonder, will I do it today? You already know. You've made the decision in advance, and that mental clarity saves you enormous emotional energy. Self-trust is built in the smallest moments. When you say you'll wake up at 6 and you actually get out of bed, that's a deposit in your self-trust account. When you commit to writing one page, making one call, or finishing a workout and you do it, you're reinforcing your identity as someone who keeps promises. On the other hand, every time you break your word to yourself, even in private, you weaken that trust. Over time, the damage adds up, not just in your productivity, but in your belief about who you are. That's why discipline is less about harshness and more about honor. It's a form of respect, not for rules, but for your future self. You're choosing now what will benefit you later. You're trading immediate comfort for long-term fulfillment. And when that becomes your pattern, your self-respect grows. You walk taller. You speak more clearly. You stop looking outside yourself for validation because you've earned it from within. The best part? You don't need to be perfect to build self-trust. You just need to be consistent. It's okay to fall off track. What matters is that you notice it, own it, and get back on course quickly. Discipline isn't about never failing. It's about shortening the gap between failure and action. It's about proving to yourself again and again that you are not ruled by emotion or circumstance. You are ruled by commitment. So if you've struggled with discipline in the past, don't start with punishment. Start with small, winnable promises. Things so manageable they're almost impossible to miss. Then build from there. Let each success become evidence. Let each choice become a brick in the foundation of unshakable self-trust. Because when you trust yourself, everything changes. You stop waiting for perfect conditions. You stop seeking approval. You move, build, lead, and grow from a place of quiet inner strength. That's what discipline really gives you, not just results, but respect. Not just structure, but sovereignty. And when that kind of trust lives inside you, success becomes a matter of when, not if. Do the hard thing first. Do the hard thing first is a simple rule that can transform your life. It's the idea that when you begin your day or your work or your decision-making process by facing the most challenging or uncomfortable task, everything else becomes easier by comparison. It's not just about getting more done, It's about building resilience, reclaiming control of your time, and becoming the kind of person who doesn't avoid what matters. Hard things are often the things that move your life forward. Having a difficult conversation, starting the project you've been putting off, sitting down to write, tackling your finances, going to the gym, telling the truth. These tasks are rarely convenient, but they carry weight. They build you. And yet, most people avoid them. We gravitate toward what's easy, checking emails, scrolling, cleaning, or doing busy work because it feels productive without requiring emotional effort. But those easy wins are deceptive. They drain your time and leave you with the same looming pressure you started with. Doing the hard thing first breaks that cycle. It tells your mind, I lead, not my mood. I act, even when it's uncomfortable. That shift, taking action before you feel like it, rewires how you approach every challenge. You stop waiting for motivation. You stop negotiating with resistance. You just begin. There's a psychological benefit too. Your brain's mental energy is highest early in the day or after rest. When you use that peak focus on the hardest task, you perform better and finish faster. And when it's done, you experience a momentum effect. The hardest part is behind you, and the rest of the day feels lighter, more manageable. You don't carry the weight of avoidance. You carry the confidence of completion. Doing the hard thing first also builds your identity. Each time you face discomfort instead of dodging it, you prove something to yourself. You're not someone who hides. You're someone who shows up. That identity compounds. Over time, it becomes a quiet kind of power, the strength of someone who knows they can trust themselves when it counts. Of course, this doesn't mean every morning needs to be a battlefield. Hard doesn't always mean dramatic or painful. Sometimes it just means meaningful. The thing you care about most. The thing you know would create real progress if you stopped avoiding it. That's the thing to prioritize, not after coffee, not after emails, but first. Start small, if you need to. Pick one hard task a day. Block time for it. Shut down distractions. And most importantly, don't wait to feel ready. You'll almost never feel ready to do the thing that challenges you. But action creates readiness. And starting even imperfectly lies the most courageous move you can make. Because on the other side of the hard thing is freedom, clarity, progress, and the quiet pride that comes from living in alignment with your highest self. So, whatever you're dreading today, do that first. Let that choice become your edge. Let it be the standard you set, not the exception, and watch how your days and your character transform. Your life reflects your standards, raise them. Your life is a reflection of your standards, what you tolerate, what you expect, and what you allow yourself to settle for. If something consistently shows up in your relationships, your habits, your environment, or your results, it's not just by chance. It's because, at some level, you've decided that it's acceptable. That may sound harsh, but it's also empowering. Because if your current life is shaped by your standards, then raising them is the key to transforming everything. Standards are not the same as goals. A goal is what you want. A standard is what you refuse to live below. Goals inspire you, but standards shape your daily decisions. You may want to be healthy, but if your standard is eating fast food every other day and skipping workouts, your life will never match your desire. You may want to be respected, but if your standard is tolerating disrespect or staying silent to avoid conflict, your experience will keep falling short. The real difference between people who grow and people who stay stuck isn't ambition, it's what they're willing to accept as normal. Take an honest look at your current standards. Are you operating out of default or design? Do you let your environment dictate your choices, or do your choices shape your environment? Do you set the bar for your energy, mindset, and behavior, or do you adapt to whatever everyone else is doing? When you raise your standards, you begin to challenge your own patterns. You no longer allow laziness to be disguised as rest. You stop calling inconsistency just how I am. You notice when you're making excuses instead of moves. And you begin to build a new identity built on follow-through, discipline, and integrity with your values. Raising your standards doesn't mean becoming rigid or unrealistic. It means choosing to expect more from yourself, because you know you're capable of it. It means deciding that certain things are no longer acceptable because you're better than others, but because you've grown past the version of yourself that allowed them. That might mean cutting off toxic relationships. It might mean refusing to keep working in a job that drains your spirit. It might mean demanding more from your mornings, your conversations, your attention span, and your routines. And here's the truth. When you raise your standards, everything around you adjusts. People treat you differently when you treat yourself with respect. Opportunities open when your energy and actions reflect clarity and purpose. Your habits shift when you stop letting feelings decide what happens next. Your life begins to rise to meet the new level you've set because the universe responds to alignment, not just desire. But don't wait for a breakdown or a rock bottom to raise the bar. Start now. Identify one area of your life that no longer reflects who you're becoming. Ask, what am I tolerating that I know I shouldn't? What would raising my standard here look like? Then make the change not with noise or drama, but with quiet, firm action. Your current life is the result of your past standards. Your future will rise to meet the ones you set today. So raise them, not out of pride, but out of purpose. Not because you're not enough now, but because you're ready to become more. And when you do, your life won't just improve, it will start to reflect the greatness that's been waiting inside you all along. Progress over perfection. Just don't quit. Progress over perfection is more than a motivational phrase. It's a survival strategy for anyone trying to grow, change, or achieve something meaningful. Perfection is a trap. It convinces you that if you can't do something flawlessly, it's not worth doing at all. It paralyzes action, fuels self-doubt, and keeps your life stuck in the planning phase. But progress is messy. It's inconsistent. It's filled with small wins, ugly drafts, awkward starts, and slow days. And yet, it's how everything great is built. You don't need to be perfect, you just need to keep going. Most people quit not because they aren't capable, but because they expected it to be easy, fast, or flawless. The first sign of struggle makes them question if they're cut out for it. A missed workout, a bad day, a failed attempt, and suddenly they declare the whole thing a failure. But real success doesn't belong to the flawless. It belongs to the persistent. To the ones who keep showing up, even when it's inconvenient, uncomfortable, or slow. Progress over perfection means giving yourself permission to be a work in progress. It means valuing motion over mastery. It means understanding that the only way to get good at something is to be bad at it first. Everyone you admire, the disciplined, the successful, the confident, didn't start that way. They stumbled. They doubted. They had terrible first drafts. What separates them is that they didn't stop. Every step counts. Every imperfect action is building something. And ironically, the people who let go of perfection often get further faster because they're not wasting time trying to look flawless. They're actually doing the work. Learning, adapting, moving forward. You'll be tempted to wait until you're ready, until it feels easier, until you feel more confident. Don't. Start where you are. Use what you have. Work with what you know now. And if you fall off, get back on. If you mess up, adjust and keep moving. If you lose momentum, restart the next day. The only real failure is quitting. Perfection asks for all or nothing. Progress asks for something that moves you forward. So give yourself permission to take imperfect action. Track consistency, not perfection. Celebrate effort, not just results. And when you feel like quitting, remember this: your future doesn't need you to be flawless. It needs you to be faithful to the process. One decision, one step, one moment at a time. If you just don't quit, you win. Because progress, no matter how slow, will always beat perfection that never starts. Keep going, keep building, keep becoming. Your best life isn't waiting for you to be perfect. It's waiting for you to continue. You are the advice you choose to follow. You are the advice you choose to follow. Not the wisdom you've heard, not the quotes you've saved, not the books you've highlighted, but the actions you take based on those insights. Information without application is just noise. But the moment you live the advice, embody it, and let it guide your decisions, that's when it becomes part of who you are. That's when it stops being advice and starts becoming identity. In today's world, we're drowning in inspiration. There's no shortage of podcasts, YouTube channels, self-help books, and social media clips that preach discipline, growth, purpose, and healing. And it's easy to confuse consuming advice with living it. You feel like you're making progress because you're surrounded by motivation. But nothing truly changes until you move from knowing to doing. The advice you choose to follow becomes your internal compass. It shapes your routines, your reactions, your relationships, and your resilience. For example, if you believe in showing up even when it's hard, then that belief should be reflected in how you show up for work, for your goals, and for yourself on the days when you feel like quitting. If you believe that your environment shapes your habits, then the advice you're following will be visible in how you clean your space, protect your focus, and distance yourself from distraction. Everyone has access to wisdom, but not everyone has the courage to live it. Why? Because advice is often simple, but not easy. It asks for discomfort. It demands accountability. It forces you to confront your excuses and let go of habits that are comforting but destructive. That's why the advice you actually live by says everything about your character. This doesn't mean you have to follow everything you hear. In fact, part of maturing is learning to filter advice, deciding what aligns with your values, your goals, and your season of life. But once you decide what matters to you, act like it. Let your decisions reflect it. If you believe discipline matters more than motivation, then don't wait to feel like it, just do it. If you value self-respect, then stop making choices that drain your confidence. If you say you want to grow, stop entertaining what keeps you small. Look at your life right now, the routines you have, the way you handle setbacks, the standards you keep. These are the result of advice you've accepted, whether from your parents, society, mentors, or your own inner dialogue. If your current life isn't where you want it to be, don't look for more advice. Start following what you already know is true. Because in the end, it's not about how much you've learned. It's about how much of that learning you've turned into living. You are not your opinions. You are not your potential. You are not what you plan to do someday. You are the advice you actually follow. And that truth, if you let it, can change everything.